Okay, Reggie, 2 more days, 2022 NFL draft. Arguably, I know you're not a huge draft guy, but arguably the most wild and crazy, unpredictable draft that we've seen in years. And I'll tell you why, because we don't know who's going inside the top 10, the top 5. Even the number 1 pick is still up for grabs and a mystery here on Tuesday morning as we sit here recording. So when it comes to the Vikings, it's even tougher to predict who's going to be there when they're on the clock with the 12th pick. But when they do, after reading all the mocks, listening to the experts, what's a scenario or decision that you absolutely do not want to see unfold when it comes to the new front office and their draft day decisions?
I would hope that they don't draft a punter. I would hope.
There's a good. It's a punter class this year. Punter head. It's a good class.
I would hope.
I don't want to get Mel Kiper on you, but this is a deep class for punters. All right. No. I'm teasing.
I would hope that they don't draft Mike Zimmer. You know, I really think that Andy and everybody is in play. You know, there are mock drafts. You know, I got notifications on Twitter last night that there are mock drafts that are seeing the Vikings take a wide receiver at number 12, you know, and most people would be like, they don't even need that. But it's like, if your guy, I mean, we've talked about it before. If your guy is not there, you know, draft best player available. And if the best player available is Chris Olave or, you know, Drake London or, you know, Gary Wilson falls down, like take the guy. Take the guy and go and put up 50 points every week. You know what I mean? Like, just do it. And so I think what's interesting is I can't recall a draft in recent years that I just had no idea what to expect at all. Like, no idea what to expect. Like, and the Vikings have that weird spot being at 12 because last year they were in the midst of being a middling team and trying to actually win and get to the playoffs as well. And it's like, there you go, reward, you get the 12th pick. And I think what's tough is like there are quote unquote premium picks in the draft, but I'm really not trusting all the evaluations of these guys this year. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't really know. And so, like, you know, there are people that are like, well, no, like McDuffie would be a great pick at 12 if they lose out on Stingley. And then there are other people that are like, you don't want McDuffie in the pick. He has, you know, short arms. He's not tall enough. He's this, he's that. That would be a reach at 12. And it's just like, okay, who's right? Who's wrong? Right. Like and you know, to every year there's some level of that in the draft anyway. But it's just like, man, like I just don't really know what to believe and what to trust. And if it's like that for me, I can only imagine what it's like for Kwesi and those guys that are evaluating talent to figure out what the heck do they. I mean, they could even grab a quarterback for all we know. Who knows?
Normally, you go into a year and you know who the number 1 pick is almost a month before the draft. It's just so clean cut, you know, usually it's a quarterback, Joe Burrow, somebody like that, right? Trevor Lawrence. But then you can start going down the line, the domino effect, and go, all right, well, we know what 1 is. Make an educated guess on 2, then 3, then 4. This year, we got no idea who's going number 1. And even when you go through each position, 22 starting positions, besides Kyle Hamilton at safety from Notre Dame, I think every position, there's no clear-cut number 1 prospect there either. It's a debate. Is it Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley? Is it Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett? Is it Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker at running back? Ultimately, here's my answer, and this might sting you a little bit, so put the earmuffs on, Reggie, if you can't handle it. But the draft, it's all about value and maximizing the value of the board, the way that falls according to the depth at each position, given the year, given the class. And I promise you, there's so much depth at wide receiver in the second and third tier that if you pick one at 12, by the time you come back to 46 in the second round, I think Kwesi and KOC would be kicking themselves and just see how many great receivers are still on the board, staring them in the face. Guys like Sky Moore from Western Michigan, John Mechie, the other Alabama receiver towards ACL, Jahan Dotson from Penn State in the Big Ten, Alec Pierce, Cincinnati. There's tons of them. I go on and on. Unless he's Jameson Williams, who I think is the next Tyreek Hill, that rare blue chip can't miss prospect. I think he's a guy that should be talked about as a top 5 pick, but because of the knee injury, maybe he falls to the Vikings. You should be thanking your lucky stars if he's still on the board at 12. If you want a receiver, that's the only name I'll accept. If that's the direction they go, it's a huge wasted opportunity from a value standpoint, with just so much depth and so many big names left staring you in the face in rounds 2 and 3 later on. I think there's still so many question marks on the other side of the ball, too. You have to go defense one way or the other with that 12th pick. D-line or secondary, add more young talent for Ed Donatel, and then you go offense later on. You can maximize the value of such a rich class. You talked about, some people say Trent McDuffie, love him, take him at 12. Trent McDuffie, you don't want him. I think a lot of people with McDuffie, just for example, to round this out, is that they don't like McDuffie at 12, but all of a sudden the same guy would say, oh, but I'll take him at 18 or 20. So you're talking about, really, I mean, what's the difference? If you like a guy, you just take him. Go get your guys, as I like to say. But I think, again, it goes back to people want to maximize value. The draft is your currency in the NFL. Your draft picks is your bank account, the money, the way you can go get superstars or trade for a Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill. And I think, again, GMs and teams and even fans understand how important maximizing that value is. Speaking of the uncertainty of the number 1 overall pick, again, last 3 months, all Aiden Hutchinson. That's the name on the Jaguars card. But all of a sudden, we get to the week of the draft, and here we are. Vegas, of all people, has changed the odds-on favorite to Georgia's Travon Walker, the other premier edge rusher, after his stock continued to rise following one of the most impressive combine workout performances a lot of people have ever seen. So while Walker doesn't have the sack production like Hutchinson, he does have the higher ceiling. So, Reggie, is it the right move for the Jaguars to be leaning towards passing on Hutchinson for Walker? And more importantly, just in general, how important and influential has this combine become for the draft stock of some of these prospects?
Man, that combine,
that was wild.
It shouldn't sway teams one way or another.
You get 4 or 5 years down the road and you go, why did I get so caught up in a 40 time? Watch the tape.
That's my thing.
Watch the tape.
They put everything on tape.
Yep.
Like, they put it all on tape. And I do think that, there are times when you watch a guy at the combine and you're like, oh man, like, because I did a story where I sat down one-on-one with Boye Mafe.
I love that.
All right.
Yep.
But he impressed in the Senior Bowl. He had a couple sacks, and he became the team MVP in the Senior Bowl. Now that is something that I can get with. Okay, and then he ran a 4.53 40 at the combine, and you're like, oh. And so I think sometimes you maybe you watch a guy on film and you say, oh, well, I just don't know how bendy he is, or how athletic he truly is, and then you see at the combine that a guy runs a 4.53, and you're like, oh, okay, he's athletic. He's much more athletic than I thought he was, or oh my goodness, that is eye-popping athleticism for a guy his size. And so I think sometimes maybe the combine can aid in how you peg a guy, but all we've seen since the latter part of the season, end of the season, Aiden Hutchinson, he's dominating. He's doing his thing, and he's a Heisman hopeful, and like everything that we've seen is he's the guy. And now all of a sudden, Georgia, wins, and it's this guy, that is, talented in his own right, in Trayvon Walker, and he does great things on the naked Olympic side of it, you know.
Underwear Olympics. I love it.
But it's like don't say, but you know, it would be a total Jaguars thing to do.
Wouldn't
you know,
it, though?
they were the only team that paid Christian Kirk the number that he got paid this offseason.
Ruin the market. The market.
The Jaguars are gonna Jaguar. Yep. And so I wish them the best with the pick, obviously. Never want to see anybody like do bad or anything. But like, it's like, okay, if you guys psych yourself out of taking what many believe is a slam dunk in this thing, like, God bless you for it. You know, do you? Because it's like Joe Burrow, a couple years ago was the guy. But there were murmurs back then about, maybe you take Herbert number one, maybe not Burrow. It's like, come on, man. And now we've seen that you really couldn't miss with either guy, but like, don't psych yourself out. Like, we saw all of the cool things that Burrow did. He put it on tape. One of the best seasons for a college quarterback ever. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't know, he only really had the one great year of prominence and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, you do all these. I think that's why the draft process to me is too long, because like after a while, you almost trick yourself out of making what
you get in your head a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just
absolutely.
like, come on, guys. Like you guys knew what the board dictated 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And now you get to the week of and you're just like, well, but this other guy, I don't know. And then now you're looking at this is a move. You hope to never be picking number one, again, but this is a move that is going to radically change the direction of your franchise. And you don't want to be out there on a whim or on a hunch when you've seen the guy on tape put together the resume to make him be the number one overall pick, and that's Aiden Hutchinson.
I'll never forget, about 15 years ago, Vernon Davis showed up. He was like, border first round pick, maybe, shows up, 255 pounds, runs a 4.38, put up 42 bench reps as a tight end, and then he ends up skyrocketing up the boards. He goes like 5th or 6th overall, and he had a good career. Don't get me wrong, he had a solid career, but again, the influence that this combine has on these GM scouts and coaches is like you said, probably a little bit too much. Trust the tape. Darius Hayward-Bay comes in, runs a 4.340. He wasn't even being talked about in the first round. Runs a 4.340. That was back when 20 different guys didn't show up to Indy and run these 4.340s. Runs a blazing 4.340. He goes 7th overall to Al Davis and the Raiders. Needless to say, Al Davis didn't trust the tape. I think Aiden Hutchinson should be the pick. Trent Baalke and the Jaguars, otherwise just gift wrapping Aiden Hutchinson, the hometown kid, to Detroit. The line should be there. Very thankful. Send a thank you card over to that.